What's a job people romanticize way too much until they actually do it? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Anything veterinary related. Getting to play with and cuddle puppies and kittens constitutes maybe 3 of what we spend our days doing. Answer: it's really not for everyone. Yes, we see healthy kittens puppies here and there for their vaccines and it's super fun. But there's also the dark side of vet med that people forget or doesn't know about. Euthanasias, very sick animals, abused animals, abusive clients, long working hours overtime, being understaffed, cleaning poop, diarrhea, vomitorrenal glands or other fluids, frustration of not finding why the animal is sick, etc., etc. Do I love my job as a vet tech? Yes. Would I recommend working in this field to anybody? No. Story 2. All these responses have validated my own belief that you should choose a profession based off your tolerance for the worst possible day in said profession. Thank you. Story 3. Anything involving travel. I was a consultant for years and it was 100 on site with the client until COVID. I flew all over the USA and sat in offices and hotel rooms for months on end. As a side note, you know you're traveling too much when the airport restaurant staff knows you at an airport that has never been your starter destination. Answer: I once flew from Perth, Western Australia to Houston, Texas for a 1-hour meeting in which I did not speak, and then I flew back again. I knew I was traveling too much when I was in Paris, giving instructions over the phone to a guy from Argentina on how to find the office in Singapore, only for me to realize all the confusion was because I was directing him to the Sydney office. Story 4. Running your own calf. It's pretty romanticized, but it's a big hustle with all the suppliers, standards, etc. Story 5. I've noticed a huge trend of individuals romanticizing blue-collar work. It's draining, depending on who you work for and what you do, lack of family life balance in some areas, and major toll on your body. I see people come into my mill and leave after lunch break after they talk about all the money they're going to make until they do the actual work. The money makes it sound good. Supporting the family is everything. But I see a lot of people not last. Honestly, for the best for some. Answer: absolutely. Trades are also seen as a fallback or just go into trades, anyone can do it job. Lots of technical knowledge to learn. Most apprenticeships in my country take 4 years now, and each trade comes with serious health risks. I've heard way too many people who think I'm drowning in money from welding. Nope, just brain-damaging, seizure-inducing fumes, early onset glaucoma, and a bunch of 20-year-olds complaining about how they should be making $10K a month on the pipeline. Story 6. Graphic design. It's a very high burnout career, even though it's a passion career for many. Somehow everyone is a better designer than you and everyone has opinions, many of which just aren't valid in design terms. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's not a good design, and just because you have a favorite color doesn't mean it will work in every design. Review processes are just exhausting. I also understand there are a million harder and more stressful jobs, but it's definitely one that people always seem to think is fun, and the reality is often not that. Answer: agreed. The market is flooded, especially for someone new to the business. Clients don't know what they want, no matter how thoroughly you discuss it with them. There's a constant competition with AI. People not in the industry don't understand all the little nuances and think they can do better for less money. Spoilers, they can't. And yeah, it's not usually fun. Story 7. Teaching. It is extremely stressful. The pay is terrible. You are constantly being scrutinized by parents, the media, admins, etc., and you aren't allowed to enforce any kind of discipline or consequences in your classroom, or the parents will go over your head to admin and complain. The admins will cave and any consequence you assigned is meaningless. Story 8. Being a doctor, you realize how limited your capacity is to change lives. You see an insane amount of bureaucracy. When you spend extra time caring for people, your patients complain things take too long. You constantly are threatened with lawsuits. You're swimming in debt. You lose an entire decade of your life. Your day-to-day work is incredibly stressful and unforgiving. You get shoot on from all angles. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Answer: fellow doctor here can't stress that enough. Grey's Anatomy and other medical drama messed up with people's mind about what to expect and what doctors are. These people on the TV series or drama are models and paid actors. It is nothing like the reality of the burnout, the stress and anxiety. You lose a decade, maybe more of your life, climbing the ladder of residency, etc., while your peers are getting married, having kids and family that they have time for. It is just sad. Story 9. Working for a professional sports team. Their hiring practices prefer interns to lowest pay scale jobs. Unless you're extremely well connected or have an Ivy League MBA, the chances of getting the big jobs are very small. The churn burn is real. Story 10. Any sort of an investigator of violent crimes or felonies. The amount of paperwork to get anything done is insane for very good reasons. Dealing with victims is often heartbreaking. Watching someone get away with takedown is excruciatingly depressing. Story 11. Librarian. People think we sit around all day reading books and shushing people, when in reality most public-facing library workers have to deal with all kinds of wild behavior on a daily basis. Answer. When I was younger, I used to work in a library, and each location had a regular cast of characters the staff would tell you to watch out for. Some of them were pretty fun, like the guy who came in every Thursday morning with a stopwatch, ask a question, and time us on how quickly we could find the answer. This was back in the Chuiros, and he was on the older side, so I don't think he knew what Google was, but using it would certainly have been cheating. Then there were the ones I was told probably wouldn't do anything, but I should stay away from. And if I saw them up to something, I was to get a more experienced member of staff and get them to deal with it. Story 12. Okay, so from the comments, literally every job we could possibly think of is that. Thank you all. That's honestly comforting. Answer. I work as an environmental engineer. I've had to read some very dreadful PDFs regarding the state of the world, and every now and then, I question if everything is even meaningful. Then I remember that one time a teenager listened to what I was doing on Google Earth and thought it was the coolest shoot ever. I was just checking a polygon, but to her it was some Greta Thunberg shoot, LOL. Story 13. Dog trainer. I love dogs. I wish I could play with puppies all day. I wish I could too. We mostly deal with serious behavior issues like aggression and separation anxiety, things that tear a family apart. And even then, we're mostly working with the people, not the dogs. And sometimes we have to convince them to do what needs to be done. They hired us as the expert, but I grew up with dogs and we didn't do it that way. Or, he knows he did wrong. Or, it isn't working. What have you practiced since last time? I've been busy. The people are harder than the dogs, except when the dogs are in trouble and you can't help them because the clients, for whatever reason, won't let you. That hurts. Then there are the dogs that you know should not be in the home, or any home. Many rescue groups pull dogs from the shelter and adopt them out without doing temperament testing. You don't know the bite history or anything about them, but they're cute. Always foster first, or find a rescue that fosters and does testing before allowing the dog to be adopted. Anyway, I love my job. I really do. Story 14. Archaeology. I know via an acquaintance of a local professor who starts off the 101 class lecture with, if you decided to become an archaeologist because of the Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider movies, you're going to have a bad time. It's not even remotely close to being like that. I've heard there's always a handful of students that don't come back after that first class, ETA. Also, being a zookeeper. A minimum of a master's degree for 12 to 14 an hour day, in and day out, of cleaning the most vile literal piles of shoot you can dream of, as well as being clawed, gored, trampled, bitten, and pissed, and pooped, and vomited on, and smelling like hot garbage most of the day, and having to deal with a stupid, mean, and entitled human being on top of it. It makes raising children look simple. Seriously, people, give your zookeeper a hug, or at least an air hug, because you probably don't want to get what's in them on you. Answer. 100 for both. Partner is an archaeologist, and I've seen the back end. Between capitalist CRM, soul-crushing work to shrinking university jobs and severe competition, it's not all that rewarding for most, which is why people don't stay. Almost became a veterinarian and/or zookeeper myself, but chose a different passion path myself due to not wanting to see animals die every day. Story 15. I'd argue that it's not the actually duties of the job that people end up disliking. It's the politics, bureaucracy, people that make lose its appeal. Story 16. Author, you think fame, wealth, notoriety, but in reality, it's spending hours and hours and hours alone with your work getting rejected or no attention 98 of the time. Answer, I'm an editor. Came here to say this. So many people think A, writing well is easy. B, writing well is the whole job. C, they know what they're doing but have no idea how any part of the industry works. And D, writing well means they don't need an editor. The failure rate for authors is close to 100. You get better odds if you break in, but it is almost impossible to help people understand what typical success looks like when they think it's Stephen King. Story 17. Banking. I did it for nearly 2 decades. The regulations are incredibly specific and incredibly strict. Company culture in banking can be very toxic. Only people in high-up roles make truly good money, and getting into those high-up roles can be very difficult. Everybody is expected to sell products, even to people who don't want them or, in some cases, shouldn't have them. You're expected to treat people better just because they have more money. Meanwhile, it can eliminate your soul to have to turn someone down for a loan you know they desperately need, and there's a lot of prejudice against poor people. Story 18. Farming. It looks cute and desirable on TikTok when you see vapid gingham dress wearing wannabe influencers pretending to bake bread. But it's a lot less cute when it's 2 a.m. and you're up to your elbows in blood trying to save a dying animal that your livelihood depends on. Story 19. Being a lawyer. Many people find the work tedious and confrontational. They end up leaving the field. Answer: being a lawyer is not like how it is depicted on TV. Most people have no idea what day-to-day attorney work is like, and many people who go through all the hoops to become one end up regretting it. This is all true. What is also true is that being a lawyer comes with the opportunity to attain many benefits. For example, my wife and I are both lawyers, and we were poor growing up. Now we're not. Aside from that, it's nice being in an actual profession that's recognized as legitimate. It's also rewarding being able to help people solve some of the biggest problems in their lives. And personally, I enjoy fighting with other attorneys. It's an intellectual challenge, and most of the time, they don't take it personally. Story 20. Acting, especially in any capacity that's not the lead or main cast. Everyone treats you like dirt, and you are basically standing around in a hot, cold, wet area for 12, 16 hours straight, more if you have makeup to put on, only to do it again the next day. Story 21. Florist. Hallmark movies are full of shoot. Like 20 of the work is actual floral design. The rest of it is hauling heavy buckets of water product, sanitizing, organizing, scrubbing, and other filthy, unglamorous chores, and it pays peanuts. Fun fact, most arrangements are pre-designed. The florist just assembles them. You don't usually get to go to work and be creative. You just follow the recipe. If you want to be creative with flowers, do it as a hobby. Answer: as a florist can confirm, I've been lucky in the industry. Grew up in my family shop, worked in small local-owned shops all over the place as an adult, and built my own customer base. I was lucky enough to have customers that allow me creative freedom. Those darn pre-designs drive me up a wall. A full day of pre-designed arrangements and cleaning the cooler is enough to make you want to throw the vase across the room. Story 22. Any job in publishing, but specifically editing. Terrible money, and now I can't even enjoy reading anymore. Story 23. Trades. Just join the trades. Up at 4 a.m., home at 4 p.m. beat. No energy for anything but work, eating, bathing, and sleep during the work week. Oh, and by the way, can you work OT this weekend? Story 24. Architect. We were all built up and taught that we're hot shots by our professors in university, thinking we built the world, only to be slapped in the face by being overworked and underpaid by the older architects and lowballed by clients. Answer: my first day of architecture school, the head of school got up and said, if you're here to make a lot of money, the trade school is that way, go learn to be a plumber. Our school actively pitted us against each other in the way they did design reviews in a way that was almost gladiatorial. I still mentor people from the school in how to transfer the skills they learned to other professions. Story 25. Working in a bookstore, many people seem to think you can just read books all day and relax. In reality, you unload heavy loads of books, so a lot of lifting, sort out orders, and basically stand all day. Answer: I worked at Barnes & Noble for a Christmas season a few years ago. Most customers were pleasant, even during the week right before Christmas. Managers were okay, but a couple of them had their favorites and were very obvious about it. The work actually wasn't bad. I was mostly a cashier, but I did work the floor helping customers and stock shelves occasionally. I loved stocking the magazines. I found it relaxing. The discount was awesome, 40, and I was always buying stuff. Honestly, probably 13 of my paycheck went back to them every week. I love books, so it was a doomed working relationship on my finances. Story 26. Baker, so much early mornings, low pay, working every weekend. Can't have a normal person's schedule because you got to be at work at 3 a.m. Sounds so bad in reality. Story 27. Public transportation. As a bus train operator, you deal with demanding dispatch, stinky and entitled passengers, fights with dirty cars and other vehicles. Also, your health takes a hit because you still need energy, but you're mostly sitting the whole time. Answer: hearing people complain that Sydney train drivers are too overpaid to be taking industrial action pisses me off. In one of the most expensive cities in the world, doing one of the more vital jobs to keep everything going, being compensated less than any other city in Australia, etc., etc. I think they simply have no idea what train drivers have to deal with. Story 28. Marketing, especially social media. Thanks to shows like Emily in Paris, people think it's all glamorous outfits, cute cafes, and snapping perfect pics, when in reality, you're basically everyone's do-it-all assistant with zero credit. Everyone thinks they could do your job better because it's just posting stuff. Super thankless, especially in agencies. Also, TBH people act like it's life or passing if a caption isn't perfect or a reel doesn't go viral. Meanwhile, influencers getting paid 5x your salary for holding a smoothie and sending a one-liner email. It's honestly wild. Story 29. Express Surrendum. Stand-up comedian. I did it for 9 years. It completely ruined my nervous system. The pre-assured to deliver, thinking about the fact that if you are not on top of tour game every night, you will not have money for rent. And hoping that someday you will make it big, the chance is very, very low, and it mostly depends on luck. Being very good does not mean you will have success. Now I got a job doing stand-up only as a hobby, best year of my life since a very long time. And also, people in entertainment are the biggest narcissists and toxic people you will ever find. Story 30. For me, being famous or a celebrity seems like a prison. No privacy, everyone wanting a piece of you, the rumors and gossip. Hell no. Unter Story 31. Running any sort of physical business of your own. Modern-day standards, regulations, permits, bureaucracy has eliminated all the hopes and dreams. Story 32. Content creator, SFW. I got into content creating and was making roughly 5K, 10K a month doing UEG videos. You end up very quickly feeling burnt out because you wake up, get ready, and immediately have to go into recording content while the sun is up. It's always very brain rot, non-creative, lying, false advertising sort of content where you're putting on a fake smile and pretending something is so great, also writing it all, making sure it's said smoothly, editing, uploading, then dealing with the insanely annoying guidelines, tech issues, brand issues, unfairness that big giant brands and companies can get away with because they're big companies. When the sun finally goes down, you're editing, uploading, planning tomorrow's content and ads to make, organizing the massive amount of Temu junk you're forced to hoard, and realizing that everything we own is so unneeded and how fake the internet is. Hard to connect with anyone because you feel like everyone's brainwashed. Story 33. First response EMS. It seems super cool and bad jerk, and like you're doing all this awesome shoot. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of bad jerk, super cool shoot to be done, but a majority calls are the mundane like tummy aches and nosebleeds or inter-facility transports unless you work somewhere, inner city or with an active gun and knife club. It's also a significantly traumatizing career choice for the pennies EMS tends to make. Answer: and y'all are seeing patients on their worst days. Emotionally or physically worst days, I mean. On my last day at my dental office, I was moving to another state the next day. We heard the sirens of an ambulance. My dentist and I watched from the front door of our office as EMS pulled into the driveway of a house across a busy road from us and worked on a man for what felt like 15. Not sure if it really weighed, though. I don't know for sure if they got things under control, but they did end up getting him into the ambulance, and seeing the family hugging each other was just so heartbreaking. Thanks for all y'all do for the community and people who need help. Story 34. Charlotte wanted my job as the event coordinator office PR at the restaurant we worked at. She wanted it badly enough that she regularly tried to sabotage events to make me look bad. I eventually left for a better job, not because of her BS, and she did get the position. A few weeks later, I was there visiting my friend and having some comped drinks, and she had the nerve to whine to me about how hard her new job was. Story 35. Chef. Glad people are finally accepting what chefs actually do, but the majority of people could not last a month in a professional kitchen. Not talking McDonald's, not that that isn't a living hell, because it is, but a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I did it for 3 decades, and the 10 years since I left have been the happiest, most peaceful years of my life. Every job I've had since has not even felt like work. Story 36. I've worked a lot of cool tourism and nature jobs. Ski instructing, multi-day hiking guide, bike tour operator, working in conservation. And while I enjoy the work, it doesn't pay well, and it's hard to find an employer that really values you. They always have applicants, so they don't need to worry too much about staff retention. So work conditions often aren't great. Of course, it varies hugely from employer to employer. Story 37. Veterinarian. Yes, you save animals, but it depends on the location where you work. I don't advise working in an emergency clinic. It sucks when owners can't afford care, and it's just depressing. Story 38. I was an EMT paramedic for 40 years. It ruined me as a compassionate human being. So many fresh faces go to school to do that job and are ruined in less than 2 years. I should have stayed with plumbing, as getting shoot on you on that job paid a whole lot better than getting shoot on as a medic. Story 39. Any job that has you traveling for a living. Don't get me wrong, I still love my job and will keep doing it, but I can't remember what city I was in last week. It all just blurs together. It's not for everyone. Story 40. Every job, because capitalism alienates us from the full tangible and intangible value of our labor. Story 41. Forensic science. If you work in a lab, a lot of the work is monotonous. You're looking at case evidence and developing things like latent prints, but it's hours of looking at fingerprints, or firearms evidence, or trace evidence. The majority of the remaining work is paperwork, broken up somewhat with crime scene work depending on your agency. Crime scene takes a mental toll, no matter how hardened you are against that sort of thing. I was typically able to do the job without personalizing anything, but that doesn't mean things don't stick with you. Plus, crime scenes are not glamorous. It's a pain in the jerk to dig through dumpsters for takedown weapons that aren't there. One of the worst I had was looking for a knife in the attic, 3rd floor, of a house with no air conditioning in mid-August. I had a nice healthy glow, sweating like crazy by the time I went outside, just in time for the news crews to get a good shot of my chunky, sweating jerk. The knife was on the front porch, in plain sight of homicide detectives. My partner was not very happy about that fact. Story 42. Veterinarian or vet tech. 20 years in the field, 10 in the ER, and 10 in feline specialty. I had a mental breakdown. So much suffering and passing. So few puppies and kittens that are healthy enough to snuggle. So much anger from pet owners, screaming about how we're only in it for the money when we drive cars older than the person screaming. I love my patients, but dislike the mental anguish. Veterinary staff has one of the highest tragic end rates of any non-military job. I got out of the field, and I don't cry going into or coming home from work anymore while I make more money. Story 43. Wildlife rehab. People think it's all washing cute ducks after oil spills, but in reality, these animals often don't reach you until they are in very bad shape. Passing or humane euthanasia is common because by the time a wild animal is so sick or injured that it can be captured and transported, it's often too late to save them. Not to mention, there is often a large demand for care, but very little funding or resources. Don't get me wrong, it's amazing and rewarding work too, but the burnout and compassion fatigue are real. Story 44. Clergy. I'm sure this doesn't land with a lot of people anymore, but some go into seminary thinking it's one thing when it's not. I went to seminary, graduated, got ordained, and the whole bit, but I have been a community organizer around homelessness and such since then, about 20 years. I've never been a parish priest pastor, but many of my peers are, and they regret it most of the time. The job chews people up. Story 45. Game tester. Sounds chill playing games all day and getting paid for it? What you're actually doing is repeating the same things ad nauseum, trying to find bugs or glitches. Story 46. Florist. On TV and in movies, we always see young women messing about with flowers. They look pretty and relaxed. It's really hard work and super seasonal, working with perishable product. On holidays or before big parties, you work long hours on your feet all day lifting heavy buckets of water, etc. Delivery is another big problem on days like Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, when everyone wants it on the same day. If you're in the north, Valentine's Day can be brutally cold or snowy, and potholes are a hazard for vases of flowers. Delivering weddings and parties and really hard work, hauling floral arrangements and props through back doors along with the catering staff. Setting up and tearing down on a short timeline. I'm so glad I'm retired. Story 47. Forensics crime scene investigators don't wear heels and drive fancy cars. We don't have all the fancy machines and get DNA and fingerprint comparisons in 5 minutes. Story 48. Growing up, our mom converted our house into a bed and breakfast on the weekends. I had to give up my bedroom, make breakfast, clean up. So if you like staying at bed and breakfasts, and that leads you to think running one would also be fun, think it through. Story 49. Not romanticizing it, but being a teacher is an underappreciated job. Some people think it's just go there and teach, and 2 months of summer vacation. But surprise, the hours you have to invest at home preparing those lessons, revising exams, papers, bureaucracy, calling your student's family if you're their tutor, and those 2 months of vacation aren't true. We'd finish the course after the students and start the following one before them, and you still prepare things in those vacations. Story 50. I'd guess that there are still a lot of people who love it, but for me, it was working from home. I did customer service calls for Verizon from home for almost 4 years. It was great at first, moved into a new apartment with my then GF, and things were really looking up. Within a year, we broke up, and she moved out. I began taking my breaks and lunch alone, and just was always by myself. I did go out on weekends to socialize, but it was a long wait to come around again. One day on my first break, I felt overwhelming dread at going back in there. So I went in, logged out, and just decided I'm done. Took them 4 days to realize I was missing. Got a job at a gas station after that, and then one of my regulars got me on where he works. Then promoted back in March, so I'm a lab technician at a nuclear pharmacy now. So much better. If you work from home, I think it helps to have a good personal life, and I did not. Verizon paid really well, and for the most part, coworkers and leadership were good, but the grinding through calls got really old. Maybe a different WFH job wouldn't have been so bad. Story 51. Being self-employed, starting a business. Everyone thinks it means setting your own schedule and having more freedom. Instead, it often means working 80 hours per week and never taking a vacation. Also, just because someone is a great plumber or auto tech or florist or baker doesn't mean they are also a good business person, and grappling with the business side can often suck the joy out of their profession. Story 52. Orchestra conductor. It's not all aesthetics and passion. It's lots of boring and repetitive work and dealing with 100 spoiled divas, all of whom know they can do a better job than you. Story 53. Airline pilot. I know people who dropped lucrative careers for a life of travel and exotism and realized it's mostly boring time alone in the cockpit, jet lag, and shoot hotels. Answer, I disagree. Maybe at the regional level, but at the majors, there is no job that provides the level of pay for the amount worked. The hotels I stay in are very nice and are in great cities. Long flights can be boring, but then I think about how many dollars I am making every minute while looking out the window. Lots of pilots have overlapping hobbies, so I can end up talking about sailing or mountain biking or whatever for a lot of the trip. Then at the end of the month, I see a large paycheck that I earn while being home well over half the month. Story 54. Being a scientist, especially in industry, incredible pressure to make the impossible happen in unreasonable time. Story 55. Federal Air Marshal. You'd think they're running around the plane doing acrobatic takedowns of identified terrorists, but that job is literally sitting on a plane for hours watching everyone while trying to blend in. You can't even sleep. Story 56. Running an inn at a small beach resort town. Everyone who comes up to me with stars in their eyes saying, I was thinking of retiring and doing what you do, gets the same answer. Well, if you like to work 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, especially on weekends and holidays, this is definitely the job for you. And most city folk don't understand there's a reason why small towns are small. Very few people want to live there. Story 57. It looks to me like being a content creator is way too overhyped. Almost every influencer I see turns into a glorified salesperson. I've seen several of them complain that even though their work is admittedly easy, they never really clock out. They constantly think about how to set themselves apart because it's a highly competitive, oversaturated field. And how is it that every single influencer in LA says that the rest are all clout-chasing, rude snakes, but they all say they're different and genuine? 2 of my sisters want to become famous influencers, but it sounds mentally exhausting to me. I think I would really dislike it, so I'll stick to consuming content anonymously. Story 58. Games testing. A job where I get to play games all day would be my dream. No, buddy. It really isn't the dream job you think it is. Sure, you spend all day playing games, but you're not really playing them, not in the way you normally would. You're playing the same small section over and over again while trying to break it or replicate a bug, and then you're trying to figure out what's causing it and how to fix it. It's mind-numbingly boring, tedious, and frustrating. Story 59. Acting, whether it's for voice, stage, or screen. Imagine having to put on your makeup and redoing a take for hours on end while pretending to be someone else, only to come out of the editing phase with just 1 or 2 takes that made it if the director's judgment was good enough. In fact, you don't have to imagine it. Here's the famous RDJ playing another dude take from Tropic Thunder. Story 60. Tabletop gaming comic store. The customer base has a lot of odd people with no social skills. As a cashier, I've experienced more harassment from men at this job than any other. We're also severely underpaid for our expertise in recommending games or a new comic series to read. Every other customer has a very specific set of wants in their game stories that I have to help them find. It requires a lot of time outside of work to stay in the loop on new releases too. Story 61. Zookeeping. It's hard physically and mentally and generally poorly compensated. Your work is constantly being debated and everyone has an opinion on what you do while knowing nothing about it. Story 62. Software engineering is seen as the easy six-figure remote job, but in reality, that is the minority of the industry. Want the amazing pay? Well, now you are working 60 hours a week at big tech. Want to be remote? Now you are competing with India and South American salaries. Want a job after you graduate with a degree? CS is now the most popular major across almost all universities, and every entry-level position has 2,000 applicants. Not to mention constantly dealing with people who have no idea what the fudge they are doing, especially PMs. Just got lucky on an interview in 2022 and have jumped from disaster to disaster every 9 months without ever producing something of value. Now they are either sending an AI slop business requirement doc for your review or committing a PR that is 100 AI generated slop that they did not even look at or run. Non-technical executives that constantly spew bullshit about how they are doing more with less, and AI is completely transforming the entire industry, when in reality, it's only showing 20F gains across everything. Although that doesn't stop them from not approving any new positions and forcing tighter deadlines. Story 63. Working in an ad agency. Even in the pre-internet era, it was a horrible, grueling grind. Lots of substances and booze, though, both as clients and in the staff. Story 64. Parenting. I think people downplay how difficult it is. And then when it is difficult, people either bail or find the easy road, i.e., corporal punishment, unlimited screen time, controlling or permissive parenting. Story 65. Archaeologist. Lots of waiting around, paperwork, days of not finding anything, getting rained on, and a lot more sciencey than you'd expect. Story 66. Middle management in general. Spend years working towards being one, and it's mostly spent dealing with things that don't matter and people who wouldn't act that way out of work. Had one guy who couldn't believe it wasn't acceptable to sit at 90 miles in a 60 mile an hour. Answer: hey, you're really good at doing a thing, so let's put you in charge of a bunch of fuckwits who can't do their jobs. Then you can do all of the management work and all of the actual work. There's an extra 2,000 pay and 20 hours of work a week in it for you. Oh, and you will get treated like shoot from everyone above you and like the enemy from everyone below you. Good luck. Story 67. Tennis instructor. People think they get to play tennis all day. Reality is you work twice in one day. Mornings, then after school hours, 6 to 7 days per week. Your meals are at weird times. You stand all day. Most clubs don't have AC or heat. People want to do the same 2 to 3 drills games every time. Shoot benefits. Story 68. Emergency medicine. I don't know if it's romanticizing, but it's certainly not what people think it is. Story 69. Being a baker. I love it, TBF. But early mornings, repetitive tasks, heavy lifting, copious amounts of raw eggs, and always the chance that the literal weather fudge with your product. Oh, and you can't go home until you finish your work entirely. Story 70. Anything art related. In my day, it was video game design. Everyone wanted to be a video game designer. It's not a great job to have. Story 71. Film TV producer. Try and make a bunch of egotistical half-wits do something collaborative under extraordinary time and financial pressure. Story 72. Doctor. Everyone romanticizes it. White coat, prestige, saving lives, fat paycheck. Then you go to medical school and get a serious reality check. You sell your 20s and 30s to training, live off caffeine and hospital cafeteria food, and rack up a mortgage-sized debt before you even have a mortgage. 4 years of undergrad to go to medical school. Then after 4 years of medical school, you have to do residency, which is another 7 years, an additional 1 to 3 years of fellowship, depending on the specialty, consistently working over 80 hours a week. During your training, you're making about anywhere from minimum wage to 15 OR, depending on how many hours you're putting in. All while your massive debt is accruing interest. I have almost $300K out in loans, and that's on the lower end because I was lucky and had already paid my undergraduate ones. You miss weddings, birthdays, holidays, and funerals because your schedule is set in stone and the rigid training doesn't allow for you to take off, even when you're sick. You work 28-hour shifts only to have politicians blame you for the cost of healthcare. Patients come in to see you after their 30-minute Google search, demanding random labs and treatments that are not indicated and believing that their research is equivalent or better than a decade of training, and you still get accused of having some sinister agenda for ordering basic labs or recommending vaccines that will prevent people from getting life-altering diseases that should have been eradicated years ago. Meanwhile, you're charting until midnight, missing holidays, and quietly carrying the weight of every bad outcome home with you. There are so many patients and families I will never forget, and guilt I carry over outcomes I couldn't change that I have to suppress, or I wouldn't be able to go back to work every day. The burnout rate is high. And when you need support for your mental health, forget it. Many state medical boards require disclosure of any mental health issues and will not issue you your license to practice or will suspend it because you need a little SSRI to help with depression or anxiety that you developed because of this job because you're now considered a risk to your patients. So physicians often will forego getting help because you're risking losing your licensure you've worked over a decade for. There is a reason why physician tragic end rates are much higher than the general public. Story 73. Medical professionals that save lives doing CPR. The patients don't just wake up like they do in the movies. Story 74. Fashion design. I honestly just wanted to design and make clothes, but you really had to deal with a bunch of assholes who wanted to sabotage your work for funsies. I'm like, dude, I have deadlines. Go get a life. Plus, you ended up doing way more work for what you got paid to do. Not worth it. Story 75. Being a cowboy was nothing but a lot of hard work, and from what I've read, it's still a lot of hard work. Story 76. Trucker. Not as romanticized anymore, but I grew up in the 80s, and there used to be a very prevalent view of truckers as vagabond heroes. Rugged individualists who sailed where the winds took them, and all had snappy nicknames for each other. I think it's actually a hard, dangerous job that can be very frustrating. Micromanaged schedules and pay that can fluctuate a lot more than most workers are used to based on factors completely out of the driver's control. Story 77. Architecture. There's a reason so many people wanted to be an architect but went on to do things that have no correlation. Story 78. Farming much harder than anyone thinks plus constant money anxiety. Tradwife housewifery manufactured right-wing BS. The military social media to the contrary. It's not just drills and ceremonies. Academia, I used to romanticize it as student, but after getting a job as university support staff and seeing the drama and idiocy that go on off. Story 79. Woodworking. It's so rare to find the kind of woodworking work that would be satisfying and enjoyable, like actually making quality custom furniture with hardwoods and traditional joinery. By far, people end up in filthy cabinet shops that are super dusty and loud, making so-so cabinets at best out of laminates and just using jigs and hardware when they had imagined themselves spending their days cutting the perfect dovetail by hand. Story 80. Museum jobs all seem awesome, and a lot of the day-to-day work can be awesome, but they often have insane educational requirements and terrible to only so-so at best pay. Opportunities are often very limited, so there is a good chance you'll have to do several cross-country moves early in your career and work with a lot of people who would have left a long time ago if they had been able, but instead have been burnt out to become grumpy, resentful, pessimists. You are also almost never working with the budget you need to do a job well, and a director's board full of people that know nothing about your field are the ones making the most decisions. You give tours to college students who just learned the definition of repatriation last week and are now convinced you are personally out to perpetuate the legacy of King Leopold of Belgium before they've bothered to learn your name or role in the museum. You'll have overpaid directors give speeches about the importance of celebrating diversity while helping perpetuate environments that make it hard for diverse perspectives to flourish, e.g., low wages for competitive positions. You have politicians who fear that education will make voters less likely to buy their own propaganda and who dangle carrots and rods at your institution to try and influence their narrative. It's definitely not all bad, but like any job, it's still a job. Story 81. People think beer sales is fun. That shoot blows. Also, good luck not getting any DUIs and having a semblance of work-life balance. Story 82. I usually think about just being a superhero. Downside is that someone always needs saving, and I wouldn't get many breaks. Story 83. Military. Grab a mop, son. The floors won't clean themselves. Oh, you're a woman? I will make your life as difficult as possible until you let me fudge you. Story 84. Working on yachts, it's nothing like the reality show Below Deck, and the money isn't worth the work and BS. Story 85. Anything with animals. During my degree, I had a stint working at a marine mammal rescue center, helping rehabilitate orphan seal pups. It sounds incredibly glamorous until you understand. Most of my day was a lot of physical labor and coming home wet, cold, and smelling like seal shoot. And getting bit almost daily. Don't miss that. Story 86. Baking. People have no idea how much manual labor baking in bulk takes and the endless demand for it. You need to lift 50 lb bags of sugar flour oats regularly. Then there is the kneading, folding, and stirring. That dough be thick and heavy. Story 87. Special needs educator. You go in thinking you're there to help a young person with special needs to succeed, be a strong support and positive influence and role model in their life. What most people see as special needs are the poster childs. There's the extremely behavioral and aggressive ones that escalate into aggressive behavior for no reason, or because they're not getting what they want. Lots of people working in this field have dealt with concussions, bites, kicks, punches, being strangled, verbal abuse, being spat in the face, property destruction, broken fingers and torn rotary cuffs, and so much more, all for less than $45K a year. Story 88. Being a librarian, specifically a public librarian, but it applies to most library jobs. A lot of people just assume being a librarian means you sit at a desk all day and read, that you don't need specialized education, and that you just deal with the happy side of the public all day. While it's true we usually find our jobs extremely rewarding and love it, it is far from what the public expects it to be. Don't get me wrong, being a librarian is such a rewarding job, and I wouldn't change anything. But there is a reason I don't work in a public library. I have friends who have been physically and sexually assaulted. I've had friends who have been stalked. I've been berated and talked to in dehumanizing ways. I've had friends witness takedown, fights, intimacy assaults, severe mental illness, abuse, substances overdoses, and so much more. It's a hard job. And then there is the professional divide on the academic side, where you're not taken seriously if you work in a staff position by other librarians. But on the flip side, if you're a librarian, you're not taken seriously by professors and other faculty. And then there is a political climate. Librarians are being targeted by alt-right, MAGA, Republicans who pull your funding, call you a groomer, call you a pedophile, swamp your library with paperwork over book bans, and in some cases threaten your life. On top of that, every year when budgets are discussed, you are constantly worried you will lose your job, or if you don't lose your job, your co-workers will. There is a reason why librarians laugh so hard at the image of the librarians in Parks and Rec, because the public thinks we are quiet, subservient, and read a ton. But in reality, it's a madhouse, and we're trying to keep people from burning the building down or take down one another for barely above minimum wage and little appreciation in some cases. Please use your public library, fight for your public library, and fund your public library. Students at colleges, use your library, fight for your library to receive more money, voice your opinions to the administration because you are so important to the campus library. Professors, use your library, fight for your campus library, encourage your students to use the library. We are going through a lot. Story 89. Travel blogger sounds dreamy, but it's unstable, exhausting, and lonely. Constant flights, editing nonstop, no health benefits, and you miss real relationships. Sharing your life 247 burns you out fast. Plus, AI is eating that content space alive now. Story 90. Gynecologist. You thought I was going to say plumber, but being a plumber is much better than people think. Story 91. People think they want to work in finance because it seems interesting and financially rewarding. It is a crucible. Unless you can get ahead through relationships and connections you already have, it is a huge front-loaded grind to get anywhere worth being. There is a lot of competition. I'm in a good spot now, but if I was at the start line, I don't know if I'd choose it again. Story 92. Owning a small, cute, independent store? People love to tell me how it was their dream. There were parts I loved, no lie, but so much of it is a real, poorly paid grind. I also have run back to the warm embrace of corporate life where I get paid, have health care, and get vacations, plus retirement savings. Story 93. Baking, especially on your own, it's not frilly aprons and cute pink decor. It's 16-hour days of flour and sugar sticking to every inch of sweaty skin, backaches and hand cramps from decorating cookies and cakes, being awake until 3 a.m., finishing something, or waking up at 3 a.m. to make sure something is fresh for a customer. I've worked in retail bakeries for 15 years and have had my own for 2. And boy, am I tired. But I'm a specialty baker, exclusively gluten-free, a rarity here, in my area, and the joy I get to see in people's faces when they finally get to have the same delicious desserts everyone else gets is worth it. Story 94, Innkeeper. Too many people meanie about everything, trying to get room comped after they've stayed in it. Story 95. Nursing medical field. Everyone thinks you'll get paid super good can save lives. Think scrubs are cute or sexy. Think they can hook up with hot doctors like it's some episode of Grey's Anatomy. Knew 50 people wanting to go into nursing at the start of my bachelor's. By graduation, only 2 of them stayed with that choice. Half the people couldn't pass the courses. The other half quit when we got to shadowing, and they had to see some chute cleanup, literally shoot. People think it's cute till you have someone start coding and pissing on themselves, and then you have to give someone CPR covered in their urine. Story 96. Being a public school teacher. I'm not a teacher, but pretty much everybody in my family is a teacher or is a retired teacher. There's so much crap involved in brutal politics, and most people have a hard enough time teaching and nurturing their own children without being stressed out. I can even imagine having a class of 25 kids. I remember my mom coming home from work and staying up late, doing all the report cards and all of her prep for different projects and buying all of the supplies with her own money, etc. Yes, you get summers off, lovely. But also you do not get to take vacation at any other time. If there's something going on for a travel opportunity, you're shoot out of luck. You can be home when your kids come home from school, but teaching is basically like presenting all day long. So all of the preparation for that presentation happens on your own time unpaid. I truly think it is a labor of love that you should only do if you're truly passionate about educating children and you really adore being around children and meeting those challenges on a daily basis. Story 97. The amount of bright-eyed and optimistic 20-somethings thinking they are going to make a career at Tesla Gigafactory only to have their dreams shattered and totally demoralized once they experience the work conditions is pretty soul-crushing. Occasionally, we would get a new hire who would be completely tricked out in Tesla fashion, and the vets on the line would shake our heads because those gals usually didn't last even 2 weeks. Story 98. Bartending source me as a teenager until I helped work a private event with 0 experience and couldn't even fake it till I made it. Story 99. Dog walking or doggy daycare. You just hang out with dogs all day, right? Well, you're picking up shoot constantly, dealing with dogs that might be afraid of you, walking in 100-degree heat, drenched in sweat. Managing animals is stressful and doesn't pay well enough. Story 100. Being a flight attendant. They think it's glitz and glamour seeing the world, but it's mostly have to eat lunch in between the trash can and the bathroom while someone is shoving their trash in your face. You can work 15-hour days but only get paid 4 or 5 hours. You're at the mercy of scheduling. I am currently spending my day off at work because if I refuse the trip, I can lose my job. Story 101. Parenting. Actual parenting, not just providing financially or giving a kid a place to sleep and food in their belly. Story 102. Owning a business. I don't know how many people I've talked to who have started their own small business, but many have this idealized version of it, such as you can take off as much time as you want or you can make so much money, only to see them 5 years later and they work 7 days a week and have less money than when they started. And they basically bought a job. There's obviously pros and cons. It can be good, but you want work-life balance. I don't think you're getting a better setup than a good-paying golf job with a pension. I'm in Canada, by the way. Guaranteed work, not risking your own money. And my friends take a ton of time off. And guess what? Someone covers for them. One just took 6 months off to travel, and her job is just waiting when she gets back. My friend who said, you can take off as much time as you want, she takes off almost no time because nobody's covering for her. Story 103. Academia. Thought this was going to be like Indiana Jones in his day life, but no, it's just being lame in order to enhance human knowledge. Story 104. Veterinarian. I know a lot of animal lovers who want this job. They have no idea how much of that job actually involves euthanizing animals. Story 105. Midwifery, I haven't been one, but I've had a lot to do with newly born babies through another job, and yeah, they're not all like on TV. There's ice-addicted babies and little innocent-looking babies you will be handing over to 13 Yo Mommy and lots more. And you will feel like you know baby's trajectory by just the few moments you spend with it and its parents. Story 106. Controversial, but OnlyFans. Everyone thinks it's easy and not a real job. No one sees that it's 24 hours, 7 days a week, non-stop having to be a creator, photographer, social media manager, and marketer all in one. Answer. The fact that OnlyFans exists as such a large and easily accessible, well-marketed platform has absolutely made online intimacy work easier than in the past, though. Randomly getting kicked off your payment service because they decided to enforce an arcane rule, having to juggle multiple sites and accounts for when some go down unexpectedly, or starting over if you had a main platform and it went down one day, was an entirely different game. Story 107. Living in the country. Ooh, the natural beauty. Ooh, the privacy. You're giving yourself a fuck-ass commute on the worst-maintained roads. You'll piss yourself every night knowing that 911 is half an hour away. If you manage to call 911 because you don't have any neighbors who will hear you scream, and you will never again know the joy of eating hot takeout in front of the TV. Answer, I loved moving out into the country. Some similarities in experience, some differences. Ooh, the natural beauty. Ooh, the privacy. You're giving yourself a fuck-ass commute on the worst-maintained roads. I agree that someone who does not enjoy driving along country roads should not live in the country. Personally, I was overjoyed to swap a 45-minute commute through urban traffic for a 45-minute commute down rural highways at a constant 60 miles per hour. You'll piss yourself every night knowing that 911 is half an hour away. If you manage to call 911 because you don't have any neighbors who will hear you scream, this sounds like a psychological hang-up. What are the actual odds of a home invasion in your area? Are they higher than the odds of a stroke or aneurysm? Are you pissing yourself every night you live alone because no one will be in your house to find your body in critical condition and call 911? You will never again know the joy of eating hot takeout in front of the TV. Yep. You lose out on delivery too, except maybe some bad pizza. My family treats it as a blessing in disguise. We cook more and go to actual restaurants when we eat out. Story 108. Chef looks cool on TV, but it's 14-hour days, burns, cuts, crazy stress, low pay unless you own the spot. You miss holidays, weekends, even sleep. Watch The Bear on Hulu to get the idea. It's love or leave. Story 109. Working at a hobby game store. You think it's all fun and games, but God's light does not shine here. You get to hear all the stories about characters from games you had no part in, or the 50 TB call of the day for Pokemon from someone trying to resell it. Or the 100th person telling you they are building a insert popular commander tribe. Story 110. Restaurant work, I did it for 20 years. It takes a lot of advanced preparation to get everything ready and have your meals out in a timely manner. You're on your feet for your entire shift, from clocking in to clocking out. You barely have time to eat or drink anything. The only time you're able to sit down is to use the bathroom. If you're a restaurant general manager, there's no such thing as work-life balance. The kitchen and dishwashing areas are always hot, with wet and greasy floors, plus people running around. Serving tables is no easier. You're balancing a heavy tray of food and drinks on one hand, trying to dodge customers and kids running around while trying not to spill anything, plus dealing with entitled customers on top of that whose only tip is to tell you to get a better job, but can't name another field of work where you leave with at least 100 or more in cash after every 4-hour shift. Those cash tips add up. Story 111. I work in the space industry, and 99% of the time isn't as cool as you see in the movies. Most days, we all just sit at a desk and look at documents or answer emails. Story 112. Trucking. It's life and freedom on the open road, they say. See the country like you're some kind of tourist. It's all BS. You're allowed to work 70 hours a week, and you can bet your employer will squeeze every minute of that out of you every week. You'll drive 11 hours a day, and by law shut down and park before you hit that 11-hour mark. Then you'll have to find a place to park for the night. Good luck finding a truck stop or rest area with any parking. So now you can find a place to park, but it's illegal to drive anymore because you just ran out of time. Don't think about parking on the on-off ramps because that will get you a ticket. You live in a box behind that steering wheel for weeks at a time, and when you're finally able to get home, you get to take a 34-hour reset. When you finish your 34-hour break, you better be back in that truck ready to go back on the road. You'll contend with bad traffic, bad roads, rude, reckless Car drivers and shippers and receivers that have no regard for you or your time, waiting for hours without pay to get loaded or unloaded. You're required to know hundreds of different rules and regulations to stay safe and legal. You are responsible for the truck to be sure it is up to all of the requirements the law dictates. If you get inspected and they find something out of order, you, the driver, are responsible and will be cited and fined. Now you can deduct that from your crap paycheck. But trucking is a lifestyle, not a job. Story 113. Being an auto mechanic sucks. You end up overworked, underpaid, and your body will be completely aged and fudged. Story 114. Working at Toys R Us. Contrary to popular belief, you don't actually get to spend the whole day playing with toys. Story 115. Animal care. Doesn't matter where, vet med, biomed, zoo, aquarium, farm, daycare and boarding, pet stores, rescues, and shelters. I've worked for most of them. Am still working with animals. Everyone pays attention to the heartwarming stories, the cool new things we learn about animals, the cute videos. What no one is seeing is the neglect, the toxicity within the animal world between the humans. Pain, passing. It's rough, and there's very little support for the type of burnout and compassion fatigue we experience. Story 116. Teaching. Too many movies and TV shows make people think you are the master of student learning. But there are so many factors outside your control. It takes years and years of experience just to get to a level where you feel competent. Story 117. For book lovers, hands down working at a library. So many rules, regulations, processes, saving grace is other nerds like me. Story 118. Being a rock star, I'm not one, but I have friends who are or have been, and they say it can be pretty miserable. Story 119. Farming? But most people that farm grew up doing it. But I hear outsiders glamorizing it, and I think there's someone that never has worked on a farm. Story 120. Tattoo artist. Not really the same because I still do love it, but I try to drill into the head of anyone trying to learn that you have to kiss your free time goodbye, draw tattoo to finally go home and eat supper draw more. I draw from midnight 3 or 4 a.m. every single night. It's exhausting and stressful, and when you finally get free time to spend with friends, family, they just want to ask you about work. But fudge, I wouldn't trade it for anything, to be honest. I draw pictures on people for a living. Well, at least until my hands or back finally give out. Story 121. Being a therapist. People often think you get to see a lot of healthy change, and for some reason, it's a revered career viewed as noble. Truth is, you get paid shoot, you go to school forever. It's actually rare you see the long-term benefits of therapy, and insurance companies are a little meanie. And many systems set up to provide help are so broken. Story 122. Teaching all these must be nice having summers off, and you only work 180 days. Like, darn, if it's so easy and a good gig, then you go do it. Except they never do. Story 123. Being a therapist. Vicarious trauma is real, and it isn't fun. And there's a lot of paperwork and the constant fear of being sued and having your license revoked for making an easy mistake or stumbling into an ethically gray area. Also, many of us, maybe even most of us, make very little money, especially after expenses. I get annoyed with the jokes about being overpaid to just sit around and pretend to listen. Story 124. The horror stories I've heard about being a male adult content star. And believe me, I would love to fudge women all day, but not doing that job, brother. Story 125. Working in media and the arts, especially as talent, most of us are barely making ends meet and jobbing, which means we're constantly looking for our next gig. It's not glamorous. It's hard work for little financial reward. Story 126. Alcoholism. Movies and shows romanticize having a whiskey per meeting and then going to a dark, smoky lounge. Story 127. Game development. You have your passion burnt right out of you and still barely make enough to get by. And your end users think they are qualified enough to tell you how to do your job and that technical and budgetary limitations aren't a thing. Story 128. Working for an airline. A lot of the times people see the benefits such as free flights and medical benefits, but there is a lot of hard work that goes into being with a carrier. Above the wing has to have a lot of mental and emotional strength, physical too, but more so the other two. Not every passenger is a complete sweetheart like what's shown in commercials. Ramp agents need to have an entirely different sense of things, from needing to be able to work in all kinds of climate conditions, physical strength, and be ready for nearly any and everything. A lot of the new hires we got where I am got told exactly what to expect and still didn't make it past the first few days. Granted, there are a lot of wonderful things that come with working for an airline, but people need to understand there is real hard work that goes into working with one and not just the sunshine and rainbows advertised. It's also a lot when it comes to being a pilot or flight attendant, but one of them will have to give their own experience to that. Story 129. Being a lawyer. Some people are obsessed with the idea of going to law school and being a lawyer. In practice, there is a lot of stress and drudgery. Story 130. Being in the arts. I'm an art historian, and while I love it, I have like 3 jobs just so I can make it work. I adjunct, work in the art department as an admin assistant, and edit papers on the side remotely. It's super hard to work in the arts unless you come from a wealthy background and have some sort of financial backing from a spouse. I don't have either of that, but never going to give up. I'll find a way for it to work. Story 131. Being a business owner, or just starting your own company, the thought of people having to rely on you to live would get me so stressed. It could all go to zero in one misstep. Story 132. I work in a bakery. I'm not sure how romanticized it is by the general public, but I do know that a lot of people apply with an inaccurate idea in mind. They think, oh, well, I've been making sourdough at home, some biscuits, and some loaves too. This is going to be cute and pleasant. Well, buckle up, shithead. We've got orders to fulfill. You're not going to have time to take a shoot because it feels like the Amazon in here and everything is proofing. Hope you like waking up at 3:30 a.m. too, because people want their bread early. Story 133. I didn't even make it through college for computer programming. Have to be so precise and just, ugh. Story 134. I am a nurse. Many people think that all nurses are compassionate, kind, and caring. Nah, man, we are here to get paid, LOL. Story 135. Being a garbage man. 60-hour work weeks for $50K a year, shoot benefits, dangerous working conditions, extreme monotony, and high workplace drama. I've seen tons of comments all over Reddit lately about how great the waste industry is. The reality is it is physically and mentally tough. Most don't make it past a year. Story 136. Chef looks cool on TV, but it's 12-hour shifts, burns, constant pressure, low pay, and crap work-life balance. I did it for a year. Ruined my sleep and knees. Now I just cook for fun. Hell's Kitchen is more real than people think. Story 137. Chefs and cybersecurity both had huge media moments and made a large swath of people go into it and waste on degree or certs they didn't realize the day-to-day is grinding. Not glamour. I was a chef right before that craze started, then moved to IT, then cyber right before that craze started. Story 138. People think being a software developer is basically doing some code, then kicking back on the beanbag and having the chef make you an omelet. It is more like hand-holding dickhead project managers who fudge themselves over, hand-holding idiot clients who want me to make them a jewel-encrusted dildo to screw in screws, because they won't listen to my advice when it comes to what is the best solution. Realizing that most of your team don't have a fudge clue what they're doing, that the management thinks shoot just magically happens without ever saying thanks. And tech just constantly getting shitter and shitter. We peaked like 10 years ago back when we had a good balance between control and barrier to entry for new tech. Now everything is overcomplicated and you're hurling over so much of the control to cloud providers and other platforms for IDP and whatever the fudge else you need, all with licensing structures that'll absolutely fudge you for doing anything even remotely off a meany basic path that would never possibly serve any sizable platform. It's all fudge. Fudge you, fudge Windows 11, fudge Visual Studio, fudge Jeff Bezos, and fudge all technology. I'm literally just here till I have enough money to buy a farm. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care.